Just how good or bad was Erik Gudbranson for the Blue Jackets this season? We're leaning towards the latter, and we'll talk about that on today's Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and ours, the Columbus Blue Jackets. I am, of course, talking about my co-host, Hayden Halson, who I definitely forgot to mention in my opening patter there. Blue Jackets are our favorite team, not just mine. Before we get started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms, on YouTube and the SiriusXM app. Now, today, we are going to be talking all about Erik Gudbranson, which, if you are a Gudbranson fan, this might not be the episode for you. I actually want to start off with kind of maybe a hot take here. I don't think Gudbranson was our worst defenseman this season, but he was pretty bad, I think. And at the early part of the season, I, criticized him a little bit on the podcast. This was obviously what you joined, Hayden. And I got a lot of comments being like, well, of course he's on the ice for a lot of goals. He's on the ice for a lot. Like, he's playing a lot of shift. Obviously, he's going to be on the ice for more goals against. And I'm like, okay, but that's not how this works. Like, you should be average. And I do think part of Gudbranson's issue was he was playing top pairing minutes for a lot of the season, which is way, way too many minutes for a guy who is kind of that age and caliber of a defenseman. But let's talk about his season as a whole. Like, was there any you're like the game tape guy here. Did you see anything from Gudbranson this season that made you think, man, this dude's definitely worth the $4 million that we're paying him?
No, I didn't. The $4 million deal for Erik Gudbranson last season felt like a deal that the Blue Jackets made in a time when, Jay, you definitely feel like this. I'm sure I feel like this. The Blue Jackets needed a little edge. The Blue Jackets needed to. This was before we got Johnny Gaudreau, obviously. He was the first domino to fall. In that case, many assume that maybe Johnny Gaudreau doesn't come to Columbus if the Blue Jackets don't sign Erik Gudbranson. I don't know. I mean, I wasn't in the meetings during those conversations, but it felt like when the Blue Jackets gave him all that money, it almost was like in that moment as a fan, we all knew that this was like the riskiest signing ever and that there was a big, big chance that this didn't work out. And of course, here we are 1 year later, and we're like, that was a stupid signing. But we're not the only team that has made that stupid signing on this guy in the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, look at where
This is his
he's
eighth
been.
NHL team, which I didn't realize until I was looking at his numbers this morning. I will give you / him credit for the Johnny Gaudreau thing. We were talking about this a little bit off mic last night. Yes, absolutely. If the Blue Jackets don't go out and sign Gudbranson, do they know that Johnny Gaudreau wants to come to Columbus, or do they just let him walk to New Jersey? And yes, every team does this. This is how free agency works. Guys get massively overpaid for way too long. That's how free agency works. That is the reward for making it to free agency. You've been in this league long enough. Go out and get that. This is probably his last contract, and he's not like super, super old. He's what, 31 years old. Okay, so he's God, he's 11 months older than me. That makes me feel ancient, but he's not like, decrepit. He's going to be 35 when this contract finishes, I believe. So he's not super old, but just looking back and looking at the moves that the Blue Jackets made on defense this season, I'm like, man, imagine how much more flexibility this team would have had if they didn't have this contract stuck to them. To your other point about edge, I don't necessarily agree. There was this weird narrative about the Blue Jackets a couple of seasons ago that they got bullied on the ice. And really, from what I can see, it was one game, and it was the Dallas Stars, and they got pushed around a little bit, and everyone kind of lost their mind about how soft this team is and how they don't have anyone that's willing to give them that grit and that edge. The Blue Jackets, of course, massively overreacted to this, went out and picked up Erik Gudbranson. They went and traded for Mathieu Olivier. I don't know that the Blue Jackets needed edge in the way that they were like. The Blue Jackets were not getting bullied. Blue Jackets did not need to get meaner. I'm looking at that $4 million and like, is that the difference between the Blue Jackets being able to keep a guy like Vladislav Gavrikov or not? Is that the difference between the Blue Jackets being able to go out and sign a veteran goaltender to back up Elvis Merzlikins this season? Because I think I have $1.9 million in cap space left. That might be incorrect, but I'm sure that's what it said when I was looking at it most recently. I don't know. Everything about this contract at the time, I was like, yeah, this makes perfect sense. I don't like it, but it makes perfect sense. And it's one of those contracts that I think is just going to get worse and worse as time goes on. But maybe it'll look a little better next season when the cap goes up. But right now, with a flat cap, it's looking real bad.
I was just going to say, for the folks out there that maybe don't know, the deal is 4 years, I think $4 million, which in terms of professional sports is not that much money, like at all. But hockey,
when you have a flat cap and you're paying, I think it's a combined $28 million for 4 defensemen in Werenski, Provorov, Severson, and Gudbranson. It's a lot of money for 4 players.
It's a lot of money. And the thing with Gudbranson, too, is he's made a lot of money in the NHL and had multiple chances to play in the NHL simply because of his size. Let's be honest. That's 6'5"
third overall pick.
People see that number and they're like, this guy could be a Norris Trophy winner. We just got to turn him into that. And it's just, you can't. Just because he has size doesn't mean he can skate. He doesn't look like anything near a $4 million defenseman out there. His value strictly lies in after the whistle shoving guys around,
but we don't even need him to do that. That's what Mathieu Olivier is for. This is the thing, and this is something I said last night. The Blue Jackets went out and got Erik Gudbranson for a bunch of different reasons, and the Blue Jackets don't seem to realize that they have a guy that does all of those things already, but better. They got him to shove people around. They have Mathieu Olivier for that. They got him to give the defense some size. They have Andrew Peeke for that. Veteran leader. Okay, I will give them veteran leadership. This is a very, very young defense core. It's a little bit older now that they've added Damon Severson. But last season, and I mean, Damon Severson's only 28, so he's not exactly, ancient. But last season, I think they had one defenseman over the age of 25. And that was Vladislav Gavrikov, who was like 27, So, sure, I will give them the veteran leadership thing. And I know a lot of the young guys have talked about how he was a really good, mentor, especially, guys like Marcus Bjork, guys like Tim Burney, who are in their first NHL seasons, and they're trying to learn how things work. And, but Gudbranson has had glowing reviews from all his teammates, which, okay, I will give them that. Sometimes you need to overpay for a big old defenseman to teach your young guys about the NHL. I don't know. Maybe I think what bothers me is, and again, this is it's not his fault, is the thing. He was playing way above his level. He was playing an average of, I don't have the ice time numbers in front of me. Let me pull those up real quick. But he played almost 1,500 minutes in 70 games this season. That is too much. He played an average of
13 minutes a game is what I got. And that was even less than I thought you were about to say. Yes.
21 minutes a game he was playing on average.
Oh, for some reason here. Oh, I'm sorry.
Are you looking at something? Are you looking at a different stat?
I'm looking at StatMuse, and it's telling me 13 minutes a game.
That's
So maybe that's.
probably
Oh,
even
excuse me. I'm looking at Erik Gudbranson, who's right above him. They stacked the Eriks. Erik
okay.
Gudbranson played 13 minutes a game. Erik Robinson played 13 minutes a game. Erik Gudbranson played 21
Yeah, Erik
minutes.
Gudbranson played an average of 21 minutes a game, which
Not
is
that is way too much.
way too
Way
much.
too much.
And again, injuries, it happens. Basically, everyone on this team, bar like the top guys, played way more than they needed to this season because everyone was injured. I'm not going out here and being like, well, Gudbranson should volunteer to sit on the bench more often. He should do one for the team and play less. And I think, and again, this is another player that I think we're probably going to see. We talked about it a little bit with Werenski. This is a player that I think we're going to see improvement from next season because he won't be playing a million minutes a night. He'll be playing on the third pairing. The Blue Jackets going out and picking up Provorov and Severson. Erik Gudbranson's choices are to play on the first pairing with Zach Werenski, which if that happens, I'm going to drive to Columbus and fight Mike Babcock in the streets, or he plays on the third pairing. And I think what we're going to do next is let's try and figure out who the best defense partner is going to be for him next season. I have an answer. Let's see if Hayden has the same answer. So we're going to talk about that in a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. But first, I'm going to tell you guys about FanDuel. Go ahead and take your first swing at betting the MLB on FanDuel. Get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets, up to $200. That's right. All you got to do is bet $20 and you're going to land $200 in bonus bets, whether you win or lose. It's $200 that you can spend betting everything from the money line to the over-under to who you think is going to hit the first home run. Or Hayden's personal favorite is, I believe, no runs in the first inning, which you can make some serious cash on that if you hit right. All on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you're going to get paid instantly. You don't have to sit around waiting for 20, 24, 48 hours. You just get that money immediately. There's no better place to bet on the MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That is FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, the official betting partner of Major League Baseball, and also us, the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, Hayden, I have an answer for who I think the best defensive partner for Erik Gudbranson is next season, but do you have one? And I wonder if it is the same guy.
The best defensive partner for Erik Gudbranson next year is me in beer league. I don't want him playing on the Blue Jackets anymore, man, after watching the tape. I mean, just to give him some credit, I guess, like I said, the Blue Jackets got him at a time when, okay, yeah, was there a narrative out there that they needed some grit? Could have Yarmov maybe found his way around it other than signing Erik Gudbranson? Yes, he could have. But Yarmov's proactive like that. And in the NHL, you got to move quickly. He saw a 6'5" defenseman with NHL talent or with NHL experience. And he was like,
okay, no, in
guy.
fairness, Erik Gudbranson is definitely an NHL player.
Yes, he's an NHL player.
We're not out here being like, send him to the monsters. He is an NHL player. He is at the kind of the very bottom echelon of NHL players, I think, but he's good enough to be on this team. My issue is not necessarily with Gudbranson as a defenseman. My issue is with Gudbranson getting paid more money than basically every other defenseman that isn't Provorov, Severson, and Werenski on this team.
Jay, he played 70 games this past year, averaging 20 minutes a game, as we just pointed out, before I thought he was Erik Robinson. But he played, 1,400 minutes of hockey in the NHL this past year and had one goal. One goal? I
don't look at him for goal scoring.
I know, but still, the plus minus isn't good. The hits number, it's not even.
He was out hit. He was hit more than he threw a hit, I believe.
He was only out hit by one defenseman, which is Andrew Peeke. So credit Peeke on that.
Exactly. He blocked 137 shots, which is like a good 70 less than Andrew Peeke, the leading shot blocker on this team. He only drew 12 penalties and he took 24. Well, he took 21 minor penalties, drew 12. So, his possession numbers, miserable. He was shooting at less than 1%, which again, I don't go to Gudbranson for offense, and 7 of his 13 points were secondary assists, which I know a lot of people consider like white noise points or empty calorie points. I saw someone call them the other day, but like he was on the ice for 1,836 shot attempts against this season. He's just, I don't know what it is. Like, yeah, I do know what it is. Like, everything went wrong this season, and I'm including Gudbranson in that, but it's so frustrating to watch knowing that again, we've talked about this so often. There is a logjam of good young defensemen, and it is so frustrating that I know a roster spot is going to be taken up by Gudbranson for the next 3 seasons. You know, who is gonna wait around in the monsters for 3 seasons? You know, the Blue Jackets already have. We talked about it. There's like 8 guys that could be on this team, in the 2 spots that are available. You know, and then you look at the guys that are on the way. Stanislav Svozil is a guy that could probably make the jump in a couple of years. Corson Kuhlman could make the jump in a couple of years. Denton Matejchuk, who we picked 12th overall last season. He's probably going to be ready to make the jump. And all of these guys are going to kind of be sitting there waiting for the Blue Jackets to get bored of paying Erik Gudbranson. It's so frustrating.
It is frustrating. And listen, Erik Gudbranson is the perfect candidate to be that third, fourth line defenseman in the playoffs that comes in, makes an impact in the game. However, he just, like you said, he belongs in the NHL. There's times on the ice when it's hard to believe that, just by how slow and how far behind it is. And honestly, he knows how to skate. I don't know if it's a mental thing, if he's starting to feel like his career is coming to an end because of how many teams he's played for, or maybe the fact that he's getting paid that he knows above his value, and maybe he's just folding under the pressure. I don't know what it is, but if there is a good hockey player in Erik Gudbranson, I want him on the Blue Jackets. And you're right. Maybe last year he just played way too much, Jay. Maybe he just played way too much, which there's a lot of Blue Jackets players that played way too much. And clearly Jarmo has done things to go get some help. We have 4 new defensemen coming in between Zach Werenski, Provison, and Juracek. The Blue Jackets should be healthier at that position. So maybe in a more stacked defenseman room, maybe we see a better Erik Gudbranson, because he's definitely good for the vibes. I don't know whose wedding it was this past weekend, but
yes, that is another positive. I was talking to a friend of mine who lives in Columbus. She's a big fan of the team, and she was like, "We were always going to go out and get a big old bad defenseman. At least they got one that like is nice and also handsome and has good vibes." So, you know, shout out to Gudbranson for that. He looked like he was having a lot of fun at Boo Jenner's wedding. So that's the thing. The guys clearly love him, you know, and I think he is good for the room. It's that $4 million I keep coming back to. You know who they could have for slightly more than that? Chris Tanev is making $4.5 million for the next 4 seasons. Jake McCabe is making $4 million for the next 4 seasons. You know,
he just won a Stanley Cup too. I think you said McCabe.
Yes. Oh, sorry, McCabe. No, McCabe is with Chicago right now. He's making $4 million until 2025.
Sorry,
Tanev is.
I thought you were talking about Braden McNabb. That's who I had in my head. Who's a defenseman for the night.
There's so many NHL players, and they all have very similar names. Also, I want to correct myself. Chris Tanev was making $4.5 million until the end of next season. I don't have my glasses on. The font on this website is very small. You know, like it could be worse. The Red Wings are paying Ben Sherratt $4.75 million until 2026. So, like, it's definitely not the worst contract out there, but. And I think when the cap goes up next season, I think the cap's probably going to go up to what is it now? Like 81 and a half?
I thought it was like, yeah,
it's 83.5 right now.
Okay.
It's probably going to go up at least $2 or $3 million. I think people are thinking next season. So like that extra $2 or $3 million, that'll make the contract look a lot better. But right now it looks bad. And I think it's going to make for some really tough choices for the Blue Jackets on D this training camp. We didn't answer the question about who's the best defense partner
I
for
do
him
have
next
a player.
season. I'm gonna say Nick Blankenberg.
That was mine.
Because he plays a similar-ish game to Gudbranson, but I don't know. I maybe that's incorrect. He plays like he's 6'6". Nick Blankenberg. He plays like he's the size of Gudbranson, but he's better offensively. He's better defensively. He's young. He is. Jeff Svoboda called him a spark plug yesterday in his summer spotlight series that he's doing, and I don't know, man. I don't want to see Gudbranson in the minors next season. Gudbranson. I don't want to see Nick Blankenberg in the minors next season. I want to see him in the NHL. And I think this is going to be the place that they see him. I think that he's young enough that he can kind of get benefit from Gudbranson's wisdom. And he's young enough that he can probably cover for a lot of Gudbranson's mistakes.
He needs a defense. He needs to play with a defenseman that's going to be able to have a lot of energy out there and cover a lot more ice than usual, which I think Blankenberg is a perfect candidate for. I would also say Jake Bean is a good candidate for that, but his game is more offensive lenient than it is defensive lenient. But that could still be something. That rolling out that D pair as the fourth D pair in a game where you're already playing some solid defense, and boom, here's an offensive kind of D pair. But the thing is, Gudbranson just throws everything off, especially after the tape that you saw last year, because he just didn't do anything right until after the whistle, which after the whistle is when I love him, because then he's active. He's, pushing people off the goalie. That stuff is really important. However, it's not as important as what actually happens in the hockey game, what actually happens in the hockey game is Erik Gudbranson needing a lot of help out there.
Mm-hmm.
So whoever he plays with, it needs to be a defenseman that has all of their crap together and can be Superman on the ice from time to time.
Yeah.
So maybe with Nick Blankenberg or maybe with Jake Bean, some guy like that, some guy that just has a lot of kind of pop in their knees and can kind of, move around and flirt with playing offense, but also is totally fine and willing to get back. I would say Adam Boquist also is really good based off if Adam Boquist was a more committed to playing defense next year, which I don't want him to be. But we just need a defenseman that can get back and can help him out, because we can't have Erik Gudbranson being alone on a 2-on-1. That's just not going to turn out good.
No, I saw too many of those this season. If I see many more of them next season, I might do something drastic. Let's hand out a grade for Erik Gudbranson. And I know you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but maybe we'll give him some summer homework as well. We'll do all of that in just a second on Locked On Blue Jackets. Okay, we're back with Locked On Blue Jackets. I'm Jay Foster, this is Hayden Houseon. We're talking all about Erik Gudbranson, and we're about to hand out a letter grade and maybe a little bit of homework as well, although I don't know that there's much homework that I can give him because my homework is basically be better, and that's a tough thing to quantify, for better or worse. Erik Gudbranson is what he is at this point. He's reached that age where I don't think we're not going to see some career resurgence from him. He's not going to magically become a much better defenseman next season. I think what the Blue Jackets can hope for is they mitigate the problems he causes and try and amplify the few things that he does well. But what is your grade for Erik Gudbranson?
My grade for Erik Gudbranson is, unfortunately, because of the contract, very low, because I'm judging him against what he's making.
Mm-hmm.
And $4 million is a lot for a defenseman. Good for him for getting that money. I'm never going to blame him for taking a contract from an NHL team. And
that's the thing. I think a lot of people think that players should be like, no, give me less money. I'm not worth that. No. That's not how this works.
He's willing to go toe-to-toe with some of the heavy hitters on each team. I mean, he fought Tom Wilson when he was with the Flames. He loved going toe-to-toe with Ryan Reeves. I like that, but it feels like the Jackets already have that in a better player in Matthew Olivier. So I don't know how much value that actually holds with me. So I'm going to have to give him an F. I'm going to have to fail him for this past year. 12 points, playing 20 minutes a night, 70 games. It just doesn't get it done for me. It doesn't get it done for me. I'm rooting for him so hard. I think he can have a bounce back year too. I think this time next year we could be saying C-, C+ for a guy like Erik Gudbranson.
I would be thrilled with a C+ for Erik Gudbranson.
And this is a huge year for him too, because I think he's literally played for 5 teams in the last 6 years. So it's been a minute since he's had an off season with a team instead of worrying about where am I going to go. So I hope he uses that off season. I hope he either, gains some new perspective on the game of hockey or add something to his game. I believe you can still absolutely add something to your game at 33 years old. There's no way you can't. You still can. And I think I'm really rooting for him. I don't know what it's going to be. I like to see him keep fighting. That's always good for me. I mean, it's always a huge entertainment value for me as a hockey fan whenever you're fighting Tom Wilson or Nick Delorier, someone I just despise on the other team. But do something more than that. Score more goals. Can I get doesn't matter how many minutes you're playing. I need 7 goals out of you, Erik Gudbranson. That's a lot.
I love your optimism.
But that's what I need.
If Erik Gudbranson scores 7 goals this season, man, 7. I don't know what I'll do. I'll jump in Lake Michigan.
I will too. I'll swim across Lake Michigan. I'll try to at least.
If you get 7 goals for Erik Gudbranson, I will give a large amount of money to whatever charity Erik Gudbranson wants me to give it to.
Same. I'll match.
I am also giving him an F. Nothing went right this season. Part of it is, quite a lot of it is not his fault. But yeah, every time he was on the ice, it felt like a disaster. It felt like everything that could go wrong did go wrong, and I don't know. He gets participation points like he's for playing 70 games. Until I believe he separated his shoulder as well, which it does worry me that the Blue Jackets had, I think, 4 separated shoulders this season. I don't know if you can avoid that with strength and conditioning, but I'm not a doctor. I don't know how that works, but yeah, if he comes back healthy and he give him 16 to 18 minutes a night, preferably on the lower end of that, against the other team's third pairing defenseman and fourth line forwards. I don't want to see him up against Connor McDavid. I don't want to see him up against, I don't even really want to see him up against second and third line guys. God, I'm blanking on every single second line guy in the world. It's fine.
Second line defense, yeah, so am I. It's early morning for us.
It's pretty early for Hayden. We're recording this super early on Wednesday because of scheduling. But yeah, I don't know. I wanted more from him, and every single time I didn't get that. Which again, not his fault. But
it's a new year though. It's a new year.
Yeah, so it's a new year. Like I said, let's new year, new Gudbranson.
Let's also just say it's a good thing we're doing this season review so close to the new year, and it's a good thing we're doing this season review. Maybe it's easier for us to also be harder on him because we know that he's, in theory, already been replaced. He will not be getting 20 minutes a game. He shouldn't be unless he's made major improvements.
I'm going to knock on wood, unless things go horribly wrong again, which the Blue Jackets can't have that many injuries 2 seasons in a row. They just can't. I refuse to believe that that's how this works. But yeah, I think bringing in, that's the other thing as well, is I think with hindsight, you look at, they've brought in Provorov and Severson. They didn't need to bring in Gudbranson last season,
No, but I mean, obviously Jarmo couldn't predict what
hindsight 2020, et cetera. He made what he thought was the best call at the time. Provorov or Severson probably wasn't available at that time. Especially not in free agency, but maybe even in a trade, because the Flyers were doing whatever the Flyers wanted, and I think thought they were going to be competitive. I think Severson wanted to extend long-term with the Devils until they realized they didn't have enough money for him. So, again, hindsight 2020. Jarmo made a judgment call. you're allowed to make bad judgment calls. Like was it the wrong call? Probably yes, but he made the best call that he thought. If I'd thought about it, I would have gone and looked up who else was available in last year's free agency pool, but it feels like that way madness lies. So we're not going to do that. We're going to finish here. Tomorrow, what day is tomorrow? Friday. We're going to be starting the first of our Metropolitan matchup series, where we go in and we're going to talk to the host of every other Metropolitan Division Locked On podcast. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking to Jared and Andrew over at Locked On Hurricanes. We're going to be talking about how their team somehow got better after being very, very good. Can they avoid being swept in the Eastern Conference Finals for a fourth year in a row? And what they're going to do with their goalies, because they have a lot of goalies. So we're going to talk about all of that in tomorrow's episode. I've been Jay Foster. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can find Hayden over at HaydenH971. On Twitter, you can find the show at LO_Blue Jackets. You can email us if you want, lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. There is no happy hour this week. We will be back next week with a happy hour, so don't turn up on Friday evening expecting a live show, because we will not be there. Thank you for listening. Thank you for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked on Blue Jackets continues to be free and available on all podcast platforms, on YouTube and SiriusXM. Thank you once again for listening. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking all things Carolina Hurricanes with Jared and Andrew of Locked On Canes. And until then, make sure you stay locked on.